It was a weekend of big interconference team matchups, OKC versus Boston. It was also a weekend of wild individual showdowns, Wemby versus Jokic. But if no one sees it on national television, did it really happen? Plus, Jimmy Butler is suspended. We know that happened, but it doesn't seem like anyone knows what will happen next. I'll ask Matt and Hayes all that today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt, Hayes, I just saw the Locked On NBA YouTube channel went over 16,000 subscribers. Make sure you're one. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see our beautiful faces at youtube.com/@ Locked On NBA. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Hayes. Matt, Hayes, we had a huge matchup over the weekend. Oklahoma City taking down the Boston Celtics and holding the Boston Celtics' vaunted offense to under 30 points in the second half. I'll start with you, Matt. What's the biggest takeaway that we're safe to take away from a game that happened on NBA TV in January?
You can get great basketball out of the best teams in the NBA right now. I mean, that was a phenomenal game. Like, it was just a really great game. The Thunder's third straight double-digit comeback in the second half. They've trailed by double digits in the first half or at halftime in the last three games, come back each and every time, won by a pretty wide margin, honestly. I think my biggest takeaway is that Mark Dagnall is in his bag, man. Like, the adjustments that he made in game, switching Lou Dort onto Jaylen Brown, having them change their approach, like coaching them into, hey, we can't just switch. We got to get into them so that we can provide help and then recover. The small things that they did were so huge in turning that game around. It was a phenomenal coaching matchup. It was a terrific battle between Shea and Tatum. It was a great defensive performance from the Thunder. And it was a showcase game that these two teams really are great. I would love to see a 7-game series between these two teams if we get there. I just loved watching it. It was a phenomenal game on an NFL Sunday on NBA TV in the middle of the afternoon in January.
Hayes.
Listen, I wish that it was on national TV because this is one of those games where you look at it and you're like, no, we're in the season. Like, the chess match, the whole aspect of it, everything that you want as far as a story of a basketball game, it was in this game. Big performances from Shea and what he was able to do with those 33 points in this game. Tatum as well, having 26 points. Jaylen Brown with 21 points. Like, it was a perfect chess match. It was a really good and fun basketball game to watch. And I feel like only people who are huge basketball heads actually probably watch that game. Like, I get it. Scheduling, you're never going to have everything perfect. It is what it is. There's always going to be that game that you expect, that you look at and say it should have been on national TV. There's going to be some games on national TV you look at and say, why is this here? But I think overall, the NBA does have to be more aware coming into it, especially on NFL Sundays where they place games like this. We knew both these teams respected to be some of the best in their respective conferences coming into the league. This game should have never been scheduled on a Sunday in the middle of the day.
Save us, NBC.
And Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Let's do what we do best here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Speaking of basketball heads, let's hear from some insiders on both sides of this matchup. Locked On Celtics and Locked On Thunder. They try to explain that Celtics second half scoring drought.
You're never going to see that again. An entire second half, Jaylen Brown 0 for 7. Derek White 0 for 4, Drew Holiday 0 for 2, Peyton Pritchard 0 for 4, Sam Hauser 0 for 2. That was insane. Credit to OKC, but also just insanely cold shooting. That is such an aberration. This Celtics team scoring 12 points, and those guys, all of those guys, they're too good to miss all of those shots.
You can go back and watch Jaylen Brown, for example, and watch all of his field goal attempts starting in the first half, and it takes you all the way through the end of the game. The reason he shot so poorly in the second half is that the Thunder harassed him. This had much more to do with the Thunder's defense than it did with shooting variance or an off night from Boston. Would you ever pick the Celtics to shoot 19% from three again? Of course not. But a lot of that was due to Oklahoma City.
Okay, Hayes, they weren't directly debating one another, but there was a little bit of debate there. Was this game a Celtics aberration, or was that an example of OKC flexing its defensive muscle? What do you think?
I think both can be true to varying degrees. I do think that, Boston shooting that cold is you're probably never going to see that again. But we can't just say that it was just their cold shooting. Like the OKC Thunder, what's the one thing that we all always agreed on? The way that they are able to play defense out on the perimeter is great. Their ability to switch, the different looks they can throw at you, the multiple players that are really solid defenders out on the perimeter. So I think it was a bit of both here. But I think that it is something that, the matchup just played into the hands and the strengths of the OKC Thunder. And they did something that Matt, for example, has been telling teams to do against the Boston Celtics basically all season. They just defended them really well. So, I know that's not the great answer. It's not the social media take answer to say it, but I think it was a bit of both last night.
Synergy's got 31 catch and shoot shots for each team. And Boston had 23 guarded and eight unguarded versus 12 guarded for OKC, 19 unguarded for OKC. NBA tracking data, which is a little bit wonky right now, has it a little bit flipped. They've got a lot more uncontested shots for Boston, but didn't feel like that when I went back and watched the clips last night. I do think that it's just kind of funny because this is what always happens is if a team underperforms, shooting aberration, just variance, never going to happen again. And then on the other side, it's just great defense. Don't discredit them. It was obviously what my team did to them. And Hayes is right. Like it's a combination of both. It's always a combination of both. The big key to me is that OKC was able to figure out matchups that work because they were getting crushed in that first half, particularly inside the 3-point line. They were shooting 83%. And I don't know that this was Dags's approach, but I will say that I thought it was really interesting that the Celtics were mostly scoring on slips and post-ups on the interior. And so they weren't taking as many 3-point attempts in catch and shoot situations. They took some transition ones. And then second half it flipped. And so it's almost like if you get them out of rhythm and then switch it caught them a little bit off guard. That may be galaxy braining by me, but I just thought it was a really interesting. The biggest thing in this was that OKC's adjustment second half tactically were what wound up making the difference, along with the block by Shea was incredible. Like Shea was phenomenal in that game.
I'm glad you bring up Shea. I don't know if Synergy tracks the number of psychos that each team has, but OKC in that game, I think had a few more psychos than Boston did. And Shea was one of them. The look that he gave after the block, but also after the 3-point, the step back that he hit, I'm not sure. I can't remember who it was over, but he had a vicious step back to help seal that game. The look that he gave the other team, the guy was out of his mind, and he's now the favorite to win MVP according to FanDuel, who has him at -155. Matt, has he supplanted Jokic as your favorite?
I'm going to defer to Hayes because I want to ask this question, Hayes. If OKC wins 70 games and Shea scores 31 points per game with 6 boards, 6 assists, but the Nuggets get to 53 wins and the 3 seed with Joker averaging 32, 13, and 10 on 47% from 3, who's your MVP?
That's a very good question. The basketball mind in me wants to say Jokic, but there's a little bit of bias there because he's won it before. I think that there's going to be that bias as well in voting. So I would say I would love to see Jokic win another MVP, but I think that it'd probably be Shea that would win it in that case.
Doug, can you not give the primary engine of a 70-win team that's not a super team like the Warriors a 31-point scorer for a 70-win team with the way that OKC is built, can you really justify not giving it to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that situation?
I absolutely don't think you can justify it. Particularly, again, he's doing so much of this without Chet Holmgren. So they lose a big piece, and you expect them to maybe struggle a little bit to figure that out, and they haven't struggled at all. And so much of that has been on the back of what Shai has been able to do on both ends of the floor. So no, I think it's the right question. And I was going to ask Hayes, I'll ask both of you, is other than Jokic putting up insane numbers, is there really another major threat? I mean, Wembenyama, we'll talk a little bit more about him later in the show. He's entered the conversation a little bit. Giannis was there for a little bit around the cup, but is there a major threat to his MVP award than Jokic right now?
It's a two-man race right now. That doesn't mean it doesn't have to be here later. It doesn't like there could be a move later, right? This can shift, and if the Bucks rattle off a run where it's like they've won 18 of 20, Giannis is right back in that conversation, right? If the Celtics overtake Cleveland for the 1 seed, if they catch up, if they go on another run, and Tatum gets back up to 30, and he's averaging 39 and 6 for a team with a better record than the Nuggets, then I think you're in that conversation. But for right now, it's a two-man race.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just those two right now. If Luka not gotten hurt, maybe there's a conversation. But now I don't even think Luka's going to qualify for a number of games played. It's just Shai and Jokic.
Okay, coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast, Jimmy Butler suspended by the Miami Heat. What happens next as two teams that are heavily rumored to be in the trade market for Butler continue to struggle? We'll talk about all that and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. Whether you're a diehard fan or you just love some friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Think LeBron's going to drop 30 points, or maybe Luka's going to get more than 8 assists. Well, he's not going to do it right now. He's just scooting around. Prize Picks lets you make your predictions. I'd bet less on that one. Prize Picks lets you make your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. I've been using Prize Picks all season, and it's addictive, honestly. Last week, I picked Jason Tatum for more than 29 points, Anthony Edwards for more than 25 points. He got more than that. It just happened to be in a loss. That's the kind of action I'm thinking about. That's the kind of action I'm talking about. And with Prize Picks Flex Play option, even if one of my picks doesn't hit, I can still double my money. Plus, once I hit, I get my money fast, sometimes as quick as 15 minutes. It's honestly the best way to keep the game exciting. Now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. No need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free and daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe, and stay up to date with local expert analysis. And you get amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Since we last left you on Friday, the Miami Heat have suspended Jimmy Butler for conduct detrimental to the team, suspended him for 7 games, partly for his lack of effort in recent games and comments to the media last Thursday. Butler has requested a trade. For the latest, we go to Locked On Heat host David Ramil and Wes Goldberg.
Butler will never play for the Miami Heat again. He will never wear the Heat uniform again.
Correct.
They're going to find something before the suspension happens.
Or they got to suspend him again. He got Jimmy Butler for Hassan Whiteside, Josh Richardson, and a first-round pick, a protected first. Then they went to 2 finals, 3 Eastern Conference finals. If you get something similar for him back as Whiteside, Richardson, and a protected first, 5 years later, that's an amazing return on investment. That's like buying Apple stock in 1987. Pat Riley and the rest of this organization has to realize you are not getting that star player back anymore. Like, that star return is off the table. And hoping and wishing that something else shakes loose between now and the trade deadline. They've been hoping and wishing as a strategy for 3 years now, and it hasn't worked. Hoping and wishing is, you got to take action now.
So zooming out, the Heat don't give Butler the extension. There are breadcrumbs that suggest Jimmy Butler wants to be traded, and it doesn't happen. And then Pat Riley says they're never going to trade Jimmy Butler, and then Jimmy Butler makes a mess of this situation. Pat Riley now looking for trade offers for Butler. They seem to be playing their own game here within the game. Matt, who's winning that game?
Who's winning that game? I think Jimmy's winning that game. Jimmy's gotten Miami to act in uncharacteristic ways, and that this is public, right? Like they're having to negotiate through the media. They're putting out things. This morning, there was a report from Anthony Chang of the Herald of, they might bring Jimmy Butler back after the suspension if they don't get what they want, which is like, really? Really? You're just going to bring him back? Just welcome back, man. Missed you. There's so much public stuff going on here. They're having to put out statements. This is messy and it's playing out in public. And the Heat, much like La Cosa Nostra, like to handle things quietly. And that's not what's happening here. So I'll say that Jimmy's winning a little bit because they're having to act so outside of their range and be so vocal with what they're not going to accept. They're not taking Bradley Beal's contract back, etc. I think Jimmy's got the edge here, but the reality is both of them are losing and are going to lose in the situation.
Yeah, I agree with the last part by Matt. I don't think any team, either of these parties, get exactly what they want. And I mean, they, Locked On Heat can say that it's an amazing return on the investment based off what they gave up and what they got when Jimmy was there. And, there's some validity to that for sure. But like, if you look at what you should, even with Jimmy Butler aging, what he's still able to do as a two-way player and what they should be able to get back for him, they're not going to nearly get that back. We've already heard that teams are lowballing them on offers right now because they lost all leverage. Once Jimmy Butler came out and it became so ugly and it became so public, you lose leverage. That's just the way that it goes in the NBA. And had they listened to Locked On NBA, we had said it. It was coming. Jimmy Butler was going to make this ugly. We all said that it was coming. And now we're here.
That sort of... You go ahead, Matt.
The other thing I think to kind of keep in mind here is that they're getting lowball because who is signing up for this psycho? Like, who is like, man, you know what I want in my locker room? A guy that's almost definitely going to get me fired. Like, no, you're asking coaches to take on a guy who can't make it work. And this was a big thing. Ethan Skolnick, I thought they did a great job on this on 5 reasons. And David and Wes have talked about this too. When Jimmy started criticizing Spo, like, you best be on target. You come at Eric Spoelstra in Miami. And if you're going to go at Eric Spoelstra, what coach is like, give me that guy. That's who I want in my locker room. I mean, I have no idea how they're going to get anything out of this, Doug.
All right, well, let's talk about 2 of the most frequently rumored destinations for Jimmy Butler because desperate times call for desperate measures. So maybe that's the answer to your question. It's going to be a desperate organization. And right now, it's the Phoenix Suns and Golden State Warriors. We're going to start with the Suns, who have lost 4 straight and 7 of their last 8. This is a team that has championship on the brain. Their owner wants a championship. Here's Locked On Suns with the gory details.
There was a trade today that Beal got traded to the Miami Heat for Jimmy Butler. Not saying that's a thing. We can get to it in a little bit. But like, if that were to happen, I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Because last night looked like a guy who was his last day as a Phoenix Sun. This team has 0 culture. I think they have 0 leadership, and that is a finger pointed at mostly Devin Booker because he's been here forever. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Nurkic, all those guys. Tyus Jones, they have no leadership. They have a culture issue, and when you don't have any of those things, talent can only take you so far.
Chris Haynes reports, NBA insider Chris Haynes reports that, quote, in the midst of a 4-game losing streak and tension in the locker room, Phoenix expected to make drastic change by removing Bradley Beal, Yusuf Nurkic from the starting lineup beginning Monday at Philadelphia. Hayes, is that kind of lineup shakeup about a legitimate effort to fix the Suns' issues, or is this about making Bradley Beal drop that no-trade clause so that a deal for Jimmy Butler is possible?
It's come on now. It's definitely a cold war going on here because that's the one thing. Like the Heat better hope that Bradley Beal does waive because that's their best chance of getting anything in this in a Jimmy Butler trade per what we're hearing right now. Like the Suns are the most aggressive team that reportedly want Jimmy Butler. They just can't get it done because the piece that they have that can match the salary doesn't want to go. So I do think there is a bit of tactic here to try to get Bradley Beal to go ahead and waive that no trade clause.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the deal got done today. Like when I read that they were moving him out of the starting lineup, I was like, oh, they're probably trying to keep his minutes down so that he doesn't get hurt, so they can still move him. If he does agree to leave. And I mean, look, I have a lot of questions here. Like, what team is going to sign on for Bradley Beal? Who does that make sense for? But my bigger one is like, why do the Suns just be like, this isn't working. I know. Trade for another mercurial, difficult superstar. That'll do it. If we just add all of them, eventually we'll win the title. Like, that's not going to fix things. Mike Budenholzer lost his brother and then got fired in the same week, and you're going to give this man Jimmy Butler? For the love of God, give Mike Budenholzer a break. I don't understand what happened to Phoenix. They should have been better this season. I have no idea. They just fell apart. You want to know who's going to win this entire Bradley Beal fiasco? The Houston Rockets that own all of the Suns trade draft futures. That's who's going to wind up winning this battle.
All right, coming up on Locked On NBA, Matt and Hayes had front row seats to some of the bigger storylines in the NBA this weekend. Wemby versus Jokic. The Knicks, are their legs too tired because Tibbs is playing the starters too much? I'll ask them all that and more on the other side. Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. And maybe after you're done looking at the NFL playoffs, you can look at those NBA MVP odds again and decide, based on what Matt and Hayes told you, is it going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is now the favorite, or will Nikola Jokic steal the show? Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On NBA ahead. All right, I'm calling this next segment Front Row Seats because my esteemed colleagues Matt and Hayes were witnesses to two of the bigger on-court storylines in the NBA over the weekend via the teams that they cover. Matt, you had a close-up look at the present and the future of NBA mastery, the Nuggets and Spurs facing off in a weekend back-to-back that featured Jokic and Wembanyama exchanging haymaker after haymaker. The team split the series 1-1, but I ask you, who got the better of the individual performances?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Victor Wembanyama. Joker had 46 on the second night when they won. And Wemby, honestly, that was kind of pedestrian in that one, but I'll just say I missed Wemby's first appearance in Denver last year, so this is my first time to see him up close. If you have the means and you live in an NBA city, go see Victor. Go see him now before these tickets get out of control. It is unlike anything you will ever see, and not just because he's tall. It is just an unbelievable ability to shape and impact the game without really still knowing what he's doing a lot of the time. He hit a sidewinder off the dribble fadeaway 3 over Christian Brown that I could not get air into my lungs for 15 seconds because of how much air was expelled when I saw it. It was incredible. He gives Joker. He is now, in my opinion, the best Jokic defender in the NBA, and the kid's in his second year. It was incredible. Just an amazing sequence. I did a whole thing on how Victor Wembanyama actually screwed up everything about the Nuggets' final play and their loss on Friday by basically pressuring Jokic to where he had to turn. And then he went for his fadeaway shot, which Joker is huge and gets that over anyone. And Wemby was going to block it. I mean, I have no words. We're all witnesses. It's absolutely incredible. Go see Victor Wembanyama.
Wemby's special, and I think that he's going to be one of those players that lives up to every bit of the hype around him. He is truly a unicorn, and watching him play basketball is special. I'm still going to give the edge to Jokic. Back-to-back 40-point games is always going to be something. And the thing is with Jokic is that we've become so accustomed to seeing these performances from Jokic that it almost just seems academic at some point with him. Wemby's great. Wemby's special. Before the nature of the conversation, I do want to spend some time acknowledging what Jokic does and still makes look so effortless at times. Like, that's the thing about Jokic is that this is really just a job to Jokic. Like, Jokic just goes out there, goes about his business, and it's special in its own way to see as well. Of course, Wemby is special and it's great to see and it's magical, and I can't wait to keep seeing matchups between these two guys for the next handful of years.
I saw a graphic on X, I believe, that was compared. It was a graphic from the coverage of one of those games. And they were comparing David Robinson's first 100 games to Wembanyama's first 100 games. And David Robinson eclipses Victor in points, rebounds, and blocks, which both puts into perspective how great David Robinson was early in his career. But then you think, oh, wait a minute. David Robinson was like 24, 25 when he got to his 100 games. And Victor Wembanyama is 21 years old. Like, it's absolutely insane what he's doing. All right, Hayes, moving on to your front row seat. You got to check out the New York Knicks over the weekend, and there's a storyline brewing there out in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks taking 2 tough losses on the road to OKC and then to Chicago after they won 9 straight, and a lot of people are attributing it to the number of minutes being played by the Knicks starters. Let's head to Locked On Knicks for more on that.
Some people are very much in the camp of the minutes are taking a toll. Other people are very much out of the camp of the minutes are taking a toll. But the third quarter felt, a little more than just the second game of a back-to-back where guys have dead legs.
7th game in 11 nights and crazy minutes in all of them. Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, 1, 2, and 3 in the NBA in total minutes. And lo and behold, like that has a downstream effect. Maybe I'm using the outcome, Alex, to justify my narrative, but I would argue that the dead legs has been an ongoing issue. And this is the second time this year the Knicks played the Bulls and they said, hey, this team is pretty mediocre. We can bring our C game and we can still come out and beat them, and they couldn't do it.
All right, Hayes, what did you see in that matchup? Did you see a starting lineup beleaguered by the number of minutes that Tibbs has played them over the course of the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, I did. I think that's just typical of a Tibbs team. I mean, he coached the Bulls too for a while, and we saw it then. But I think also it was a little bit different in that matchup against the Bulls specifically because that Derrick Rose halftime was so motivating that I do think the players came out with a little bit of extra oomph in that second half, a little bit to take a little bit more advantage. Like, I mean, the Knicks scored it was the Bulls scored 41 points and the Knicks scored 17 in the third quarter of that game alone. You got to look at legs in a case like that.
Maybe. I mean, I think those things kind of hit you harder once we get to March and April, right? Like, it's that cumulative effect, I think, that drags you down. My bigger thing here, I think, honestly, is like, I'm worried about the Knicks and facing teams that have an elite offense. They might be really good versus average offenses and low offenses, but I think they're going to have a hard time. Like, they're built to outscore you if you can't outscore them. And so I'm a little bit concerned about teams like Chicago, Indiana. If they face one of those teams in the playoffs, I'm going to be a little bit worried about teams that are fast and efficient. That seems to be a model that, at least on the surface, is giving the Knicks a little bit of a problem with their win profile.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ace.
So I just looked at it real quick. Players who've played the most minutes on the court so far this season. Mikal Bridges with over 1,400 minutes played. Mm-hmm. The top 3 are all New York Knicks players. Mm-hmm. The only player that's not a Knicks that's there is De'Aaron Fox, and he's almost 200 minutes less than what Mikal Bridges has played. So we talk about like in March, like they're almost in March by minutes played already.
Is that Tibbs just not trusting the bench? I mean, are there bench issues there now? I mean, when you look at the Knicks bench, is there a reason why he's staying away, or should he really, access some of these guys a little bit more over the next couple of weeks, Matt?
You only adopted playing starters too many minutes. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the bench until I was a man. Like, look, this is who the man is. What are you talking about, dog? He doesn't trust his bench. You cannot blame the snake for biting you. You can't make a tiger change its stripes. Whatever animal analogy you want to use, they are all endemic to who Tom Thibodeau is in his soul, which is I will play my best players until they are dust. And Josh Hart better get some moisturizer because by the end of the season, it's going to get pretty grainy.
Well, I think the answer for the Knicks is pretty clear. They just got to go out and get more starters. Like trade deadline means just find 2 or 3 more starters. I do want to ask real quick, Matt, do you buy Hayes's Derrick Rose argument there that Derrick Rose halftime set? Should we put one more win in Derrick Rose's column for the Chicago Bulls?
Yeah, I mean, look, they were all really excited to see him, and he's a legend there. I have complicated feelings about it based off of an off-court case a couple of years ago that I think that if you want to be like a complete person, you need to go look at the same way that there's other people that are revered by the basketball community that I think if you want to do this, you need to go read the files, go read the court cases, like do the work, right? But Rose is a Chicago legend, period, and dot. On court, like everyone loves him, and every NBA player that has ever been a teammate with Derrick Rose has adored the man. And so, yeah, I do think there's probably an emotional boost from that.
Okay, let's go to Kawhi Leonard making his season debut for the Clippers on Saturday. He scored 12 points on 4 of 11 shooting, grabbed 3 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 steal in a 131-105 win over the Hawks. Very quickly before we get out of here, how does a healthy Kawhi Leonard change your outlook on the Clippers? Hayes, we'll start with you.
I mean, if he can stay healthy, then it changes it drastically because we know what Kawhi can be on the court as a two-way player. Like no matter the injury, whatever else, my hate of the Clippers, you can't ignore that. When Kawhi is on the basketball court, he's one of the best two-way players in the game of basketball. The problem and the question that I have here is that as they acclimate to playing with Kawhi Leonard, are they just going to lose him again as soon as everybody gets used to it and have to go back to what they do before? But if Kawhi is able to stay on the basketball court, this is going to be a top 4 to 5 team in the Western Conference.
You ever have that event that you don't want to go to and you think it's going to suck, but you keep getting texts and everybody's like, it's so awesome here. Oh man, this DJ just showed up. Oscar Isaac's here. He's got a guitar. And you're just like, fine, I'll go. But you're just resolute to be the last one to the party. That's how I am with the Clippers. Like, it's fine. They're having a really great season. The defense is good. Ty Lue's coaching his face off. I refuse to buy in on this team. When we get to the playoff time, I will show me that they're in a playoff series healthy and winning games, and then I'll talk about them. But they and the Sixers are in their own little corner of the kitchen for me.
Yeah, and he was on a minutes restriction for this game, and I think the big question is, like, I mean, are we going to know what a Clippers team looks like with a fully healthy, fully minutized Kawhi Leonard before the playoffs, or are they going to be, like, super careful with him? So we'll monitor it. We'll talk about it here on Locked On NBA. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts. That includes YouTube. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Thanks to Matt. Thanks to Hayes for their analysis today. Be kind to each other, and we're going to see you right back here on Tuesdays, Locked On NBA.